Welcome to Section 420, Talkin Yankees. My next guest is Christian. He's co-host of the NYYSportsTalk Podcast, which focuses on the Bronx Bombers. So he's going to join us to share his thoughts on the Yankees, as well as a very important film series called Rocky. Hey, Christian, welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going? Well, glad to be here.
All right, it's a pleasure having you. Now, again, you're co-host of the NYY Sports Talk Podcast, which, again, people can follow you directly on Twitter, Christian_NYYST, short for Sports Talk. And, of course, follow the show itself on Twitter, NYY Sports Talk, as well as check out the website, NYYSportsTalk.com. So, again, pleasure to have you here. And so this gives a little background on this podcast with you and your buddies.
Well, the show's in its fifth season. We started midway through the 2017 season. It just kind of happened out of nowhere where my co-host Chris was kind of getting bored, and he just created this Twitter handle to kind of just interact with Yankee fans. And then we had always kind of talked about maybe doing something, being passionate Yankee fans and trying something. And then this came about, and then I don't even think we recorded the first show. And then somebody out in Akron, Ohio, the Fox Sports affiliate out there reached out to us to see if we wanted to come on and talk to Mark Bishop, who's a big, he's a host out there, and to talk about the Cleveland Indians series that was coming up. And that's been a relationship that we've had for a few years now. And it's just kind of taken off. Our first guest was actually Vic DiBitetto, the comic. God only knows how we pulled that off. When we listen back to it, it's so cringy to hear how we've kind of come from that to where we are. We've talked to a lot of really cool people, all the big beat writers like Sweeney Murdy, Brian Hoke. We've had on actually something really cool is we talked to Bob Klapisch, which was, for me, growing up reading his columns in the Record, that was really cool. We talked to guys like Brett Boone, so, and we had Lance McCullers Jr. on when the whole Yankees and Astros thing was going on in 2017. So we've talked to a lot of really cool people. It's kind of really taken off a lot bigger than we had anticipated, but we're still striving for more. So
that's awesome. And again, people can check out wherever podcasts are available, plus go to the website NYYSportsTalk.com, see some of those past episodes. And also, I saw it's pretty interesting. Because you got some cool, interesting shirts. I like the Paul O'Neill one the most. Paul's thoughts from the basement. But also, I guess during the quarantine period, you reach out to some former players like Jim Leyritz and Ben Hella, and just kind of 10 questions in quarantine that they're pretty interesting.
Yeah, that came out of necessity because we were just trying to give people content while there was no baseball. So, the people that agreed to do it were very gracious for. We had shot for the moon on a lot of them. And, what we came back with, we were very pleased with. Even guys like John Flaherty and Jack Curry that, did it, we were very happy with. And, it's, you had to be very innovative, I guess is the word, in 2020, especially before baseball came back, because we were getting ready for baseball, COVID hit, and just nothing happened. And then you're saying to yourself, how are we going to fill airtime? Like, we didn't want to just disappear through until baseball came back. So we had to get it creative and to just come up with different things. And that's one of the things that we came up with.
Let's just get into these Yankees for a second. Kind of a, get off ugly start to the season, which I knew was going to turn around a little bit. And then, just mentioning Kluber throws a no-hitter, and then they come home. You're at the series. They sweep the White Sox, and now they're riding high. And then, of course, next start we find out Kluber's pretty much going to be done till August. So, what do you think of the season so far? And even now recently, they came and score like one run. Forget about two. They came and score one run.
It's been it's 162 game season. And I think that a lot of fans, because of last year, they don't realize that it's 162 games again this year. Yes, the 5-10 start was brutal. No, I'm not saying that it wasn't. It was ugly. It was frustrating. But then they started playing better baseball. I think they went 8-0-2 in their next 10 series until they lost to the Blue Jays this past week, and now obviously with the Tigers. The one consistent thing is that they've been inconsistent offensively. They're not scoring runs. I mean, you can list any thing that you hear Michael K repeat 100 times during the game, and they're all true. They're not hitting with runners in scoring position. They're grounding into a lot of double plays. That they're not, it's been frustrating. And I think before this past week, I had actually sat down and did numbers. I think it was like 52% of the games that they had played up to that point, they scored 3 runs or fewer, which is it's not sustainable. And you've seen it kind of this past week where it hasn't been sustainable. So again, now they're back in one of the valleys, and it's baseball, so everybody's freaking out that they're on the verge of getting swept by the Tigers, and the Rays and Red Sox are coming in, and they can easily go 5-2 in those next 7 games. It's a long season, so a lot of fans after 5-10, they were done. The season was over, and that and it, to me, it goes in one ear and out the other, because I've seen this a lot over the years, where the Yankees they play terribly, then they get hot. Then they play terribly, then they get hot. It's just, where are they going to be at the end of the year? And right now, what is kind of frustrating you the most watching this team is that they're not scoring runs. If they were losing games 8-6 and hitting 4 home runs a game, you're like, okay, I expected that, because really coming into the season, it was colon the question marks, right? Everybody's been saying that, something that we said on the show a bunch of times, but they're losing games 2-1, or they're losing games 3-2, where, in your lifetime, especially in the last 20 years, did the Yankees fall behind 3-0? Did you ever think the game was over? But now it feels like they're down 10 runs. And that's kind of what the frustrating thing is with this team right now.
No, yeah, I totally agree. It's just like the pitchings have been exceptional, even the starting pitching. Just the one buck. It's just it's sad to see a lot of these performances go to waste. Like even like Cole seems sloppy. He only gives up 1 run, and he still could lose a game. And again, it's like pulling teeth just to get run. The bullpen's been good. Chapman's been excellent. I know he had that one little hiccup, but overall, Chapman's been good this season. Maybe the best we've ever seen him, especially with that new little like splitter he's added. Just again, that one mark is just, you have all these great players still, and they just could barely scratch 3 or 4 runs together.
They wish they could scratch 4 runs together. I mean, it's been frustrating, because, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know how you guys are and your show and everything, how analytically driven you guys are with all that stuff. But to us, that's not what we're about with baseball. Like, I'm 37 years old. I didn't grow up with analytics, and I'm not saying that there's no place for them in the game. I respect them to a degree, but to me, it's all about what I see, what I watch, and there's just something's not clicking with this offense. And people can say, oh, batting average doesn't matter anymore. Well, yesterday they had 5 guys in the starting lineup that are hitting under 200. So tell me how that doesn't matter. And like, people are always, I see people tweeting things like, oh, his expected batting average or expected. I don't care about expected right now. Like, what's the production right now? And you got Frazier hitting $180, Gary's hitting $180, Gardy's hitting $100. All these guys are hitting 180. Like, you can't tell me all their advanced analytics are good, because if they were, this team wouldn't be scoring 1 or 2 runs a game.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned. I was going to bring up Brett Gardner. It's just like, again, he's around 200, 0 home runs. Again, we don't think of it as a home run hitter, but 2 seasons ago he bopped 22. So he does have power, but we haven't seen 1 home run from him and 3 RBIs, and he really can't complain because they shipped out Talkman. Hicks is hurt, so like Gardner has this opportunity, and he's not cashing in on it.
Right, and it's something that we've said on a show. It goes back to when the Yankees kept giving CeCe these 1-year deals. It's okay. We're okay with CeCe Sabathia being the 5th starter, but he can't be more than that. And then he ended up being more than that, and that's where the problems come along. And it's just like, we're all on our show. We're all big fans of Brett Gardner. Stat Guy Rye, who's the 3rd member of the team, he does an excellent Brett Gardner impressions. I mean, if anybody that's listening to your show right now that's not really a big fan of the NYYST podcast, I implore you to go check out some of our shows with Stat Guy Rye, because he's really the star of the show with all his impressions. So we're all big fans of Brett Gardner, and we said the same thing that we said about Sabathia that I just mentioned a moment ago. I'm okay with Brett Gardner coming back, but he can't be a starting player on this ball club, which is now he's in that role. He's a starting player on this ball club. And I guess that's Brian Cashman's fault for relying on Hicks being healthy, which now he's lost for the year. Judge, I mean, I love Aaron Judge. I'll fight for him to the death, but why is he DHing so much? Like, in the doubleheader the other day. They brought up Estevan Florial just to get through the doubleheader. And I'm saying to myself, why would you do that to the kid? Aaron Judge can't give you 7 innings in right field to get you through that until Stanton comes back. And again, I'll defend Stanton, but he's another injury prone player. So, again, now you put yourself in a position where you have to rely on Brett Gardner to be a starting player because, I mean, Miguel Andujar, championship teams don't have Miguel Andujar as a starting left fielder. They shouldn't even have Miguel Andujar as a starting third baseman, which is his position. But, I mean, this is where we're at right now.
And again, funny you mentioned him. I think you might have read my mind. I was like, why are we having him play left field again? I think the only reason is this out of desperation because, again, you get nothing from really Frazier in left field and figure, all right, maybe he could come up, let's just stick him in left field. But I just rather have superior defense over the possibility of Miguel Andujar hitting. And he's been okay, but I just, hold my breath anytime a fly ball goes in his direction. I mean, he could turn a single into a triple for another team.
Right. And that's what I was saying about Florial. Like I tweeted that I want this kid to come up here and spark the team. This was before we knew it was just it was going to be like a day trip for him. And, I get responses, oh, he's not ready. He's hitting whatever in AAA, which is fine. He might not be ready offensively, although his last at bat showed you he's got some pop. Even if he's not ready offensively, my 2 points were he can't be any worse than you have 3 guys in the outfield, not counting Judge because he's morphed into more of a DH, especially when Stanton was on the IL, hitting under 200. So he really can't be worse. And number 2, even if he is bad offensively, you're eliminating a weakness in the corner somewhere with either Frazier, who I know he's been better as in the outfield, but I still don't trust him fully. Or you're eliminating Andujar, which I don't trust at all. So you got Florial out there who is going to play good defense, and you can shift Gardner into a corner. So now at least you have 2 good defensive players, which for a team that doesn't score run, playing good defense should be at a premium.
No, I'm totally on the same page, Joe. I'd rather have, again, even if Florial doesn't have the potential of Andujar's bat, I'd just rather prevent as many runs as possible because we can't score any. Now, one Yankee, again, I think may have something to do with it. It's been DJ LeMahieu. Now, he hasn't been super horrible, but he hasn't been the machine. And I think some of it has to do with that he's just such an MVP for this team, just setting the table and moving. Even if they get a rally at the bottom of the lineup, he'll be at the top of the lineup to get those runners in. He just hasn't been producing this season so far. And I think some of that has to do as well because he's just so important for this offense. And the fact, again, he's in the 260s batting average. I think that kind of filters down for the rest of the lineup.
Right. And I joked about it that the Yankees, they played hardball with him in the offseason, that they pinched. Look, they needed to get guys like Kluber on this team, which, it was a necessity with the luxury tax constraints that were set upon them, that they needed to try to get every dollar saved on LeMahieu, but he's playing like a $15 million a year player. I joked if you wanted him to play like a $25 million a year player, they should have given him the $25 million a year. But right. And it's something that we've been saying on the show. It's something I brought up. This team is not going to click offensively until he gets going. And it's not that he's been bad. He's been around league average, but you're just used to, in the 2 years he's been here, you're used to him being a guy that plays like a top 5-10 player in the sport. And he's just not that right now. And I don't know what it is. It seems that his K rate is up. I mean, it is. His ground ball percentage is up. He's not hitting as many line drives. And again, I don't have an answer for it. If I did, I'd call the Yankees and give it to him. But he is the offensive catalyst for this team. And until he really gets going and goes on one of these DJ type runs, it's going to be hard for them to really, be a consistent force offensively.
Yeah. I mean, he's like, for the Yankees, he's been the MVP player. Only one good positive note. He hasn't taken those offensive struggles into the field. Like he's still, good defensive solidly. So it's not like a total collapse, but yeah, he hasn't been the machine. And might've been, I don't remember last season, that had shut him down a little bit. He had like that, I think it was like a pinky injury, which he also had in Colorado a couple of seasons ago. Maybe that's cropping up and he's just playing through some pain. Because other than that, I mean, he's still 32. So it's just like, what happened, So I think it might be maybe an injury, one of his that thing.
I'll be honest. When I turned 32 is when it all started going downhill physically. So, but I also don't play Major League Baseball. So,
all right. So And getting to the pitching now, obviously you mentioned Kluber. It's kind of weird that this has a strain and the basically saying he's probably not going to be back till August, which is kind of extreme. So I think it's two things. I just think they really want to limit his innings to begin with. So they're kind of using this as an excuse. But that being the case, I mean, do you have faith in Tyone or Devi Garcia be able to step up and kind of be in that number 2 type starter behind Cole?
Well, here's the thing, right? And I'm twofold on this is another prevailing theme on our show, is that two things can be true at the same time, because a lot of fans, they just say X is true, but that means Y can't be true. But that's not how we are. We're in the mode that two things can be true at the same time. While in 2021 should have been a year the Yankees should have pushed all their chips into the middle of the table and went for it. That means no luxury tax, none of that. It's just give me the best possible team. In-house, he's stuck to the luxury tax threshold, and it's his team, and that's fine. He can do whatever he wants. But also, you're not seeing a guy that's slashing payroll. I mean, if you're giving Brian Cashman $200 million to build a team, I mean, you shouldn't have the type of problems that the Yankees have. So he went out there and he needed to fill 2 spots in his rotation, and he took 2 projects because it's what he could afford. So in a season when you're telling me that you are going to be a legit championship team, you stuck 2 guys, really 3, because Domingo Germán hadn't pitched since the later part of 2019. You're putting 3 guys in your rotation that hadn't pitched for the majority of the last 2 seasons. Now, Germán's been really good. I mean, and I always feel uncomfortable praising him because of what happened, but I always like to, I like to tell people, like, I have to separate the person from the player, because if we're going to discuss Yankee baseball, I have to talk about Domingo Germán, the pitcher, while also not condoning what he did personally. So, but he's been really good. You can pencil in Germán pretty much since he got sent down and came back up. He's been a different pitcher. You can pretty much pencil him in for 6 innings and 2 runs every time he's out there, which should win you enough ball games. But you look at Tyone, the 2 Tommy Johns, and he's not there. Like, you're watching a guy that is working his way back from major injury. I'm not saying that he'll never be good for the Yankees. It's just that it's frustrating to watch in a year when this team is supposed to be a legit world championship contender, that they're working with this guy trying to work his way back, which wouldn't be so bad if you didn't also have Corey Kluber on this team. Now, yeah, Kluber, ever since Boone made that whole training wheels comment, and it's not his exact phraseology, but he basically said that he was going to let the reins loose on Kluber and Tyone a few weeks ago or whatever it was. And Kluber's been really good since then, and Tyone still hasn't been. But now we're seeing what happens with a guy like Kluber, who hasn't pitched in 2 years. He's hurt now, and you're going to miss him for 2 months. And people were thinking we're crazy saying this, but the Yankees shouldn't take themselves out of going and acquiring starting pitching. And Max Scherzer's the big dream piece. You don't know if the Washington's going to trade him or whatever, but even if you can't acquire somebody like that, go get somebody that can fill major league innings, give you 6 innings where you don't have to tax the bullpen or worry about, having a non-competitive game after the 3rd inning. And the guy gives you a chance to win a ball game. Like, the Yankees should not take themselves out of doing something like that, despite all their other issues.
And there's going to be another project in Luis Severino coming up in a couple months as well.
He's not I'm sorry to cut you off, but he's not a savior to me. I love Sevy. I've seen how great he can be, but a lot of fans are like, "Oh, Sevy's coming back," but he hasn't pitched in 2 years either. And Cashman said it a weeks ago or whatever it was, he's really going to be whatever we need him to be, and he might be a guy that needs to step in and pitch the innings out of the bullpen, because by the time he's ready, you're going to work him back to give you 2 or 3 starts at the end of the year and not really be able to trust him going into October. So his role this year might be a bullpen guy. And you've seen just recently in Queens with a guy like Noah Syndergaard coming back from Tommy John, first rehab start. Now he's been shut down for 6 weeks. So you can't rely on Luis Severino right now.
That's a great point. I was actually going to lead to one of the questions that if the Yankees make a move, whether it's position play or, starting pitcher, I guess, you kind of answered that. probably leaning towards they're going to need a starting pitcher. And it's just kind of funny. Had we broke spring training. We're having too many starting pitchers. Now we're going to be desperate for it because, again, Kluber's going to be gone for a while. You have a project with Tyone and Severino. And, again, Garcia's still finding his way. Only kind of steady Eddie's Montgomery. But, I mean, I would trust him with a playoff start, but you still don't really feel confident with Montgomery going into pitching a game 2 or game 3.
Yeah, I mean, I like Montgomery. He's a back end of the rotation guy. So I mean, if you're going into October with Garrett Cole followed up by Jordan Montgomery, I don't feel confident with that. And if you put a couple guys in between when you need Jordan Montgomery, then that's a really solid rotation. And the Yankees just don't have that right now.
All right, so my guess is this. Hopefully, if when we get there October, I think the Yankees will be there. Again, like you said, it's a long season. Only a couple of games separated by the Rays and Red Sox. So I don't almost even bother looking at the standings till like July anyway. But I just think if they could get back, and if we get Kluber back, the good version of Kluber that we've seen with Cole 1 and Kluber like that, I think that was what the Yankees are looking for. And I think this, like I said, they're just going to baby him, and they're going to baby a lot of these pitches with the innings, just to make sure they're there in October, because that's what really counts. Winning the games now is like, yeah, who cares? But you need fresh arms, at least healthy as possible come October.
If you've really been paying attention to the usage of these guys, if Boone's got to go back-to-back save opportunities, Green pitches one night, gets the next night off, and then it's Loiza's night, and then Loiza's off the next night. The idea behind this is to not burn these guys out when they need to give you multiple innings on back-to-back days when the games really are at an increased importance. I'm not saying that games right now aren't important, but the idea is to not do to these guys what you did to Adam Ottavino. This guy, Adam Ottavino, he's washed up. I mean, he hasn't pitched great in Boston. I haven't really followed it too closely, but the way they used him in 2019, we call it proctoring. With the way Joe Torre killed Scott Proctor, Aaron Boone did that to Adam Ottavino. So, I mean, the idea is to not do that in May. So
yeah, I think Torrey was infamous for they did that to Proctor. They also did that Tanyan Sturts guy too, just burnt him out. And I totally agree. I liked
Ottavino. Was another guy too.
Yeah, exactly. Him, Tom Gordon, burnt all those guys out. But yeah, great point about Ottavino. He was excellent for us in the regular season, but the last 2 postseasons, absolutely nothing in the tank. The Yankees are, I guess, as you said, they're in the valley right now, so hopefully they could turn around a little bit and get hit a peak. So. I also saw that, again, you're a self-proclaimed Eli Manning defender, which I'm totally on the same page with that one. I thought he definitely got a raw deal and the way that ended. But more importantly, you're a big Rocky Balboa fan.
Absolutely.
Now, also available on your website, again, NYYSportsTalk.com. You and your buddy kind of ranked all the Rocky movies. So we're going to get to it a little bit. Now, I got to admit, I didn't see any of the Creed films. Reason being, I just can't, for me, for a Rocky movie, it's Rocky 1 to up to Balboa, where he's the main fighter. I know he's the trainer and all that stuff, but I couldn't bring myself yet to watch any of the Creed films. But you and as well, your partner, you rank 5 as like the worst one. Is that correct?
Yeah. And I always say this, like, I don't really think Rocky 5 is that bad and people give me heat for this, because if you really look at the tenor of the movies, Rocky 4 is the one that doesn't belong, because that's just like a straight up roided up 80s action movie in a boxing ring. It's what it is. I love it. It's great. I mean, I grew up on that movie, but it doesn't really fit the overall atmosphere of the Rocky movies. Where Rocky 5 does, it's just that some of the bad in it is just so bad that you can't acknowledge it other than being the worst movie in the series. I mean, you got Richard Gant playing a poor man's version of Don King. Tommy Morrison didn't belong anywhere near a movie studio. I don't mean to speak ill of the dead, but he sucked. I mean, come on now. It was terrible in that movie. And then, the street fight. I mean, what are we doing here? I mean, so, yeah, I mean, there was the certain themes of the movie. There was actually a really good story behind it. But I mean, the bad was just so bad that a lot of people couldn't look past it, and I don't blame them.
Yeah, I liked it for some reason. The one I didn't like was 3. I never felt connected with 3.
Right. I feel the same way, dude. I don't know what it was about Rocky 3. It's just, I like it a lot. I do, but I never had a connection with it. I agree with you on that.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know. I think because usually Rocky, we used to think, all right, it's built up to one fight at the end and that's it. I think with Clubber Lang, because now there's 2 fights in one movie, and they're almost the same. They're both like they're done in like 2 or 3 rounds. You know, it's just like it's not really an epic battle. And I totally agree with you on 4. Again, it's like he's fighting the Terminator or something. It's not even a human being. So it's an awesome fight at the end. Don't get me wrong in terms of like watching a film, but yeah,
I would suggest checking out Creed 2. The first Creed is good on its own, but if you grew up as a big fan of Rocky 4 as I was, Creed 2 should be required viewing, and do what I did. Watch 4 and then watch Creed 2, because it really serves as almost a direct sequel to Rocky 4. So I would definitely recommend checking that out at some point.
Now, one of the sequels, the Rocky Balboa one, which was like kind of last time he was in the ring, I was actually quite surprised with it, because a lot of those things, like you're going to be disappointed, like Indiana Jones 4 and the Crystal Skull, or Blues Brothers 2000, or Godfather 3. But when you have one of those long layoffs, you almost like cringe. But the film actually delivered. The only weird thing is, like, were you surprised that because they wrote Adrian out, just having her pretty much being killed at the the beginning?
I was when I heard it, but when you watch the movie, she doesn't need to be there. The movie doesn't make sense if she's there. What is Rocky fighting for if she's there? Like, he's coping with all this loss and all these things taken away, and the one constant factor for him was always her. So I mean, if he's just happy married in retirement, I mean, the necessity to fight and get the beast, as he calls it, out of the basement probably isn't there. I mean, that's one of the factors of him needing to do it. And I love that movie because Rocky 5 came out in 90, right? So I was about 7 years old. So there's that long gap, and I grew up watching these movies with my dad, but never really experiencing them in the theaters. And then I was probably 22, 23 when that movie came out. And just the experience of going to that movie, people were into it like they were watching a real fight. So I always call it my Rocky movie, because it really came out when I was old enough to really appreciate and go see a movie in the theaters. And I love the ending, man. It paid such perfect homage to the first movie, and he didn't need to win, and he just went out the way he needed to go out. And that was the thing that I was so nervous about with him coming back for the Creed movies, is that it's such an iconic character that how do you bring him back when he wrote the perfect ending for it?
Yeah.
But in Creed 2, not saying that it was better than the ending in Rocky Balboa, but they did it. They managed to send him off again in a way that he deserved to go out. So I was happy with that.
Christian, I appreciate having you on, sharing about your podcast, sharing some Yankee talk, and a very, very important Rocky talk, which is, very important.
Yeah.
Again, people could check you guys out. Again, it's NYY Sports Talk on Twitter, as well as NYSportsTalk at .com for the website.
Thank you very much for having me. And anytime you need more Rocky talk, you know where to find me.
You're my guy.